Welcome, Dan. Thank you very much for stopping in and choosing to chat with me today. I really appreciate it. Um, you've been able to achieve and do things in the hobby that most people would dream of at this point, and are likely unattainable for 99.9% of anyone who has touched a Pokemon card. Um, things like opening every booster box, which is
Yeah.
pretty amazing. Owning a complete 1 through 4 set of the Pikachu trophy cards, buying a trophy card, one of those, directly from the actual winner at Worlds, which is pretty awesome. And now you've made Pokemon your full time gig, which is pretty awesome as well. Something that I maybe hope to do someday too. Maybe. So, with all of those accomplishments under your belt, kind of what's next? Like, what's your next goals, personal collection goals, or business goals, or what are you working towards right now?
There's a lot there. I guess I'll start with my original goal, gotta catch them all, right? Catch them all collectibles.
Hmm.
I can never afford to own everything all at once. I don't know how many people can. There's not too many out there that can. And affording it is one thing, and then actually getting them is another too. But the more the better. So the 1 through 4 Pikachu set, I assembled those. I've since disassembled those, and maybe someday I'll get a two back to have the 1, 2, 3 art set. But if not, I reached the peak of that summit, and there's a lot of other things on my radar. Anything I've never owned is on my radar essentially. So Pika rings, Mew orbs, anything like that. High end TMBs, SSBs, Illustrator. I mean, the
Yeah,
higher, the more unreasonable it is, but who knows?
the Grails.
Yeah.
Um, so you just mentioned that you sold your what was it, 2 and 4, right?
Yep.
What was the motivation behind choosing to sell those? And you sold them to Rusty TCA Gaming, which is awesome.
Yep.
I messaged in the Discord. I think I was like, I was so happy that they went to. For some reason, I felt like I had some stake in it somehow when you sold them, because they're just like monumental pieces, of the hobby. And it was awesome that they went to Rusty, who has obviously been in the hobby a long time and loves Pokemon and stuff. So that was really cool transaction and weekend you had out there and stuff. It seemed like it was awesome.
Yeah. A lot of fun. Main motivation was just I made a video on it on my channel, but what it came down to at the end of the day, the $110,000 that I got for those two cards, I think I'm able to outperform those two cards with that money. That's all it came down to at the end of the day.
Yeah,
5, 10, 20 years, what I should be able to do with that money in my business, in my investment accounts, is very likely, I think, to outperform what the cards would have done themselves.
gotcha. I feel like sometimes in our, when Jake and you discuss kind of parting with certain cards, or should you sell, should you not, it kind of comes up the idea of, well, can you reacquire them someday or not? Like, are they cards that would be impossible for you to get again? And maybe you should determine whether or not you should sell based on that sort of metric. So this kind of, I feel like, goes a little against that, because it's probably going to be pretty difficult maybe to achieve that 1 through 4 again. So yeah, I feel like, but I mean, it makes sense. I have a hard time parting with uh, base unlimited Charizard CGC 8.5 for some reason, and I know I could definitely use the $500 or whatever and make money using that, but for some reason I don't know. I just hold on to them.
Yeah, the 4, I because I did like the completion of the set, and the 4 came available at one point, so I went for it. When cards of that caliber come up,
Yeah.
you go for them. You don't like wait for necessarily the optimal, oh, I want this year or I want this grade. I did luck out where the four copies I bought in that set all graded 9s, but I did at one point have a spare 3 that I sold raw, and I had a spare 2 that graded an 8.5, and I
Oh
sold
wow.
that to Pokemon Radar, who still has it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, another part of me, as far as like what I could do with the money versus what the cards were going to do on their own, the half arts were a little scary what they did. I don't know how closely you followed them, but on PWCC in 2020, a number 2 PSA 9 half art sold for $110,000. It was the first one that hit the market in quite a while, and it hit
Yeah.
during peak mania. And then the successive sales of PSA 9 number 2s went like 110, 60, 50, and then one went for like $26,000 or something.
Yeah.
So part of me was like, I actually knew at the time that I locked down the sale with Rusty in mid-May that in June on the PWCC premiere, a PSA 9 number 3 was coming up. So part of me was thinking that one might go really high. It might flush a lot out all at once and then proceed in the same fashion as the half art did. So that was part of my thinking as well. Um, it went for 32.4 if I remember correctly. I think it was 27 plus buyer's premium. So yeah, that'd be 32.4. So given where that went, if anything, it went a little bit lower than where Rusty and I pegged the value.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't draw too many out. Like, so it almost more of a healthy price. If it hit 100, 5 more would have come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mine probably would have went somewhere, or I I would have contemplated it. But
Yeah.
so yeah, given that data point, the data points that Rusty and I put out there feels more healthy and reasonable. Now you might not see a 50, 60% retrace from that one. Well,
Yeah.
110 to 26, that's closer to 80%. So I'd be extremely shocked if you see an 80% retrace from that data point.
Yeah. And your number 3 you acquired yourself. Was it in DC at a Worlds?
Yep.
And what was that like? I know you've explained it a couple times in different videos or podcasts, but it had to have been. I mean, I get crazy like rushes of adrenaline and emotion when I'm going for like a big buy, thousands of dollars, and I know that it's going to be something that's going to be in my collection a long time. Was that? I'm sure it was like that, but it was also kind of weird because I think you said that like you went to some hotel room and it was like the guy with all of his friends and they were all celebrating and you were like trying to buy the card and everything.
Yeah.
How did that go?
It was a little nerve-wracking. Because one thing I've seen and I've experienced a little bit, like, and I know Mason Cardinal Gaming, he's talked about when he's in his store and a deal's going down, having onlookers almost
Yeah.
like the peanut gallery, a little bit of worry that someone might say, oh, that's not enough, you should get way more. Thankfully there was no like outside commentary, because
Yeah.
at the time what I paid for it was what they were going for. Like I paid a very strong market offer for what they go for on the ground floor at Worlds. um but yeah, it was the same thing for me. Like when I make a big buy on PWCC or on Heritage or eBay, your heart's racing
Yeah.
when the bids, when the clock's coming down, and whether your snipe goes in, whether you put it in or you have a proxy in, just seeing those numbers go up, hoping it doesn't go over yours. There's a lot of adrenaline and stuff there, heart beating and all that. In person, doing that negotiation and counting out the money on the bed and getting the card, like that was really, I'm tied to that card. It's funny because it's my least favorite art of the three, I think.
Okay.
I like the number 2 because it's blue and just the way that Pikachu's posed, which that's the one I don't have anymore.
Yeah.
The number 1 I like because naturally it's the number 1. Like people don't collect memorabilia from the people who lose the Super Bowl. People collect memorabilia from the Super Bowl champions, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So the number 1 is the number 1. I really value that one above all else as far as like monetarily, but uh nostalgia, whatever you want to call it, having a physical tie to that card because of an emotional tie to that card, I guess,
Yeah.
because of that experience. Definitely one of the brighter parts of the hobby, the whole trip itself, and then just the adrenaline rush of doing that deal in person.
Well, and it to me, I'm plagued sometimes with indecision where I will contemplate like big buys over and over again, and there's a battle between wanting to be smart, but also is it going to get away if you don't act now, sort of thing. And recently, I had 5 of the Poncho Pikachu's, all sealed, show up on Facebook or whatever, and they were for a really impressive price, in my opinion, at least sealed. They were pretty good for just raw. I would say they were pretty accurate, but sealed condition. And I don't know if they knew, but I didn't know that the Magikarp poncho comes behind the Gyarados, so I didn't even know it was in the sealed pack. So it was an extra kind of bonus.
Mhm.
But that was the most amount of money that I've spent so far getting into this, and it took a little while. It was like trying to talk him down a little bit, and then I was like, I don't think I need to talk him down a little bit. Just think I need to go buy them, and that indecision. So being able to just know what you're doing and being decisive is huge too, for sure.
Yeah, and I remember the back and forth. Like in my 8 years back in the hobby, I've made a lot of good buys. I've also I've let some things go over a small amount. Like we just had the Patreon monthly live the other night, and I was pulling up what I had paid for some EX Ruby and Sapphire booster boxes,
Yeah,
and I found my 6-7 year old emails with collector's cash, and I passed on German first edition box. I passed on a Sandstorm box, a handful of boxes over like $20 or $30
yeah,
on like a $400 or $500 box. I have countless emails, countless stories, eBay best offers where I let things go over a little bit, and probably the next day, the next week, I probably bought something else. So I could make an argument that I wouldn't have had something else. But when it came to that card, um, I think I did go a little bit above what I told myself I'd pay, because it's just I'm not gonna let this slip away over a couple
yeah.
$100.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes with eBay best offer, someone will send me a best offer that's like pretty close, but there's part of me that's like, nah.
Yeah.
And I should take it because I'm getting paid and I'm making the money or whatever, and then I will send them something in between, and then they'll just walk away, and I'll be like, dang it, I should have sold that damn card.
Yep.
But so going back to the boxes, you've opened every box, which is impressive. Something that would
English
be
based
amazing.
first. English based first is the only exception.
That's the
I,
one.
I did
Okay,
never get that one. My white whale. Yeah.
gotcha. Do you think that it seems like it's just really not doable now? When you were opening those boxes back then, could you make money when you were opening those boxes? Like, were you able to open the box and then kind of cover most of the box with like a single card or a couple cards and be able to keep a lot from the box?
The ones that are the worst EV today were bad EV then too. So
Okay,
like
the
all
middle
the EX
era.
era ones, I
Yeah,
lost money pretty much. It was I don't remember the exact numbers, but I know my EX Deoxys booster box, I paid several $100s. A Rayquaza Gold Star 10 would have paid for it all, but I didn't hit a gold star in that box, not even one of the lotties.
gotcha.
But that whole endeavor was largely funded. Clearly, it was like the collector in me doing it, not the businessman in me,
Yeah,
because the EV was so negative on those. But the EV was so positive on Jungle and Fossil First Editions, especially. But it
yeah,
was also pretty positive on a lot of the other WotC First Edition ones. I hit like a PSA 10 First Edition Yanma. I believe I made that pop 3 or pop 4.
oh wow,
That funded multiple boxes alone, because
yeah,
that went for like 2 or 3 grand at the time. I think it's 10 plus now, maybe.
yeah,
But proportionally, like what that card went up compared to what PSA 9 base unlimited Charizard went up, like it
yeah,
didn't go up as much, that super low pop card. But yeah, the mid era ones, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Call of Legends, those were still relatively cheap. I actually intend to do a video at some point. I just haven't taken the time to do it yet. Maybe sometime in July. Every date and price that I paid for the box. But a lot of those black and white ones were 100 something bucks. A lot of the Heart Gold, Soul Silver, I want to say, were high 100, low 200 maybe.
yeah,
So they were negative EV, but they weren't like, that was still a lot of money then. I mean, I was
yeah,
buying Fossil First Edition boxes for 400 to 500. So
yeah.
depending on how you look at, like, I'd buy a fossil first edition and open it, and I'd double my money, and then okay, now I can buy Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Triumphant, and base or whatever.
Yeah.
That was kind of the way I justified it.
Yeah, I feel like nowadays the boxes are basically collectibles within themselves, and they're priced that way. Like it's
Oh
no
yeah.
longer where like a PSA 10 of the chase card can cover the price of the entire box. Like the boxes are priced well above, getting that chase in the highest grade, and that makes it near impossible. Well, logically, or like a business savvy person
Oh,
would not open a vintage box nowadays from buying it sealed just because of how much they are.
and I guess a little bit of context and a disclaimer too. I did minimize the negative effect to my wallet. A lot of the boxes I was only opening the 12 heavy packs.
Mm,
So that minimized the effect. Alongside that goal, I had a goal to complete a pack collection of every single pack. I actually had some friends at the time that were also doing that.
yeah,
So I was weighing out the packs. This was at the time where weighing was a little bit less, it was known, but not as mainstream. And some people were a little back and forth on it. And my take has always been, as long as you're honest and you sell light packs
yeah,
as light, it's all good to go. And that's what I did.
yeah.
Some of them I was grading the packs. It was that era where they folded the flaps over and they were hideous.
Mm,
So I only did that on like some of the really first edition WotC, slightly more liquid ones. Um, but yeah, it made it so I didn't get hurt so bad. I'd buy a box for say $500. I'd keep an art set for myself, and then I'd sell a few art sets directly to collectors. And then
gotcha.
I just auction off a couple art sets or sell some light packs by it now just for
Yeah,
art collectors.
that's a smart way of doing that. I messaged. I think you'd commented on it, but one of my dreams someday is to open a Japanese Team Rocket box because 60 packs, all hollows. Team Rocket's one of my favorite sets. It's got the Dark Charmeleon, which is my favorite artwork, and it that would be a dream. But I was looking up prices, and it's like, man, if it's 160 a pack, that's like closing in on 10 grand. It's like
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Maybe someday.
Yeah, they're all really expensive now. I honestly, if I spent 5 minutes thinking about it, I could probably relatively closely approximate what I spent on every box to open every box,
Yeah,
but I don't have a great concept of it. I guess I'd really have to, there's like 70 or 80 sets at the time that I had done it. Yeah, it's a fairly big number, but it's nowhere near. That's probably a second part of the video I'll do, like estimating roughly what they are today, because
yeah, that would be.
we don't have a great handle on all of them, but a lot of them have sold relatively recently.
Yeah, I've been binging Gem Mint Pokemon videos, and he did a big sale video. It was like $100,000 sale video, and he had a Japanese Gym Challenge box and a Japanese Team Rocket box, and I think the video was like 2018, 2019, and they were like 2 grand a piece, and I was like,
Mm,
ooh, that would be good.
yeah.
I might be able to do that. But yeah, not anymore. Um, so now that Pokemon is a business for you, I know Nick kind of operates where he's kind of niched his collection down to very specific items, and then everything else is kind of a part of the business where everything's for sale for the right price. Do you operate that same way nowadays, or are there things that you get back from grading and you're like, oh, I just really like that, I have to add it to the personal collection?
I always joke that I have a backlog, not as bad as PSAs, but it's pretty bad.
Oh yeah,
I have a PWCC vault that in March of 2021, I think it was when they did that initial promo, I sent them everything. Or no, was it March of 2020? I guess. No, it would have been 2021 because March of 2020, the prices hadn't yet. That was just the start of the pandemic and the prices hadn't rocketed yet. So I sent a lot of my, alongside my opening one of every box, I had a goal PSA 9 of every hit card from every set, every era. And I completed that as well. Like I had
dang,
PSA 9, every WotC first edition holo, all the e-reader, holos, crystals, shinings, every heart gold, soul silver legend. every level X, every old school EX, Gold Star. So a lot of those went to the PWCC vault. The Gold Stars all have since been sold. I sold those as the week before I bought my number 1 Pikachu. And that was like pre-boom. That was like early 2020. So
Yeah.
I sold my PSA 9 Gold Star set at like 13,000, I want to say. And I bought the number 1 Pikachu. The Gold Star set proceeded to like triple over the next 2 months. It
Yeah.
seemed it was crazy. But I did get the number 1, so it didn't hurt that bad. But yeah, I still have in my vault nearly. I know I sold Fossil Jungle Rocket, Base Unlimited, the ones that are like really, really reobtainable.
Yeah.
Because I have tons of those. I'm constantly winning these on Heritage, like 8.5s and CGC 8s to 9s of a lot of the Neo, WotC first edition holos in general.
Yeah.
So I don't even have a great grasp on everything I have, but I have definitely everything e-reader and Neo era. I still have in my vault. PSA 9 first edition, e-reader obviously not first edition, but I have a lot of slabs I need to go through. Some need to be cracked and resent to CGC. Some need to be cracked and sent to PSA. At some point over the next year or two, I really need to take a better stock on what I have. But cards like this, where the pricing is at today, I'm not interested in selling them because I can't really replace them
Yeah.
for cheap. So I start selling the most replaceable things, and I'm essentially busy full time, still not caught up on all that. So I guess once I catch up with all that, doing all the modern stuff I do, then I can get to that type of stuff, which might be 6 months, might be 6 years. I don't know.
And with the vault, with PWCC and now I guess the eBay vault, is that sort of like, apart from obviously the security portion of it, where a lot of that can not be at your house and might be more secure in those locations, is it also kind of like a out of sight out of mind thing? Like if you're not looking at it, you're not tempted to sell it, sort of thing?
Partly that was part of it when I sent it. Yeah, the main thing was discomfort with the valuation being in my house and insurance. At that time, I wasn't yet insured. Now I do have like a business insurance, so I am safer in that regard. But I like having that chunk of value there. At some point, once the eBay vault gets open for direct submissions, maybe I'll have a big shipment going from Oregon to wherever the eBay vault is.
Yeah. Well, you did a really good video. I think it came out today of like the top three things that you should do before like making this kind of a business. And I thought that was really good. And I actually have a question that's that's tailored to like, if you're gonna start this as a business, kind of what recommendations would you give someone who is just kind of getting into it and thinking about like, okay, seeing the money making opportunities and don't want to kind of, did you make any mistakes early on that you think people should know about now, before starting this?
Absolutely. Very, very many. Yeah, the three top mistakes that I think I did Pokemon investors just to get that keyword into the title, right, for YouTube.
Yeah, yeah.
But I did mention that it's applicable to collectors, flippers. I jokingly added like scalpers, whatever you want to call yourself, whatever you're doing. If you're buying and selling cards in the hobby, these are three important things. And the first one was, if you're interacting with this hobby with an intent to profit, again, not financial advice, not tax
Yeah, yeah.
advice, but per the IRS, if you're doing something and it's making money and you're intending to make money, that's defined as a business and you're going to owe taxes on that. So ideally, you get in touch with professionals, which is step number 2, accountants, financial advisors, whatever they may be, attorneys. Like I'm an S corporation. I paid an
Yeah.
attorney to do my certificate or articles of incorporation, whatever they call it. But yeah, those two things together are one of the biggest things. Don't do it through your personal credit card, the same one you're buying gas and groceries on. Don't do
Yeah.
it through your personal bank account, because then when you go to your accountant at the end of the year, when you get that 1099, it's a nightmare, because I went through that nightmare pre-Pokemon. I went through that when I was doing coins. I was buying and selling little bit of bullion, silver and gold, a little bit of like junk silver, pre 1964 and prior, US coins, dimes, quarters, halves, dollars. So yeah, going through that nightmare, doing it all legit. Like I think a lot of people really do a disservice to themselves trying to avoid that 1099 and fearing that 1099 when it's really not that daunting. It really, pay the right people to do it,
Yeah.
and more than you pay them, they'll be saving you in taxes. So those were the first two things. And then the third thing was more like, be careful projecting past performance into the future. Don't try to do it with this past 5-year period of insanity. Don't
Yeah.
forget that 10, 15 year that Pokemon was like almost dead.
Yeah. I actually have a question about that. So, um, you've been in the hobby a long time, so you've seen a lot of different prices, ups and downs, and everything. And uh, when do you obviously pre-boom, Pokemon was in a particular place. There were, I guess, probably floors for certain cards that, or ceilings for certain cards, and then that you got used to. And then post boom, now everything's like 3, 4, 5x from those prices. So, how do you, I guess, determine whether or not this new price floor is the floor you should be buying in at? Is there is there like a factor or something that you can look out for that makes it like, okay, this is the new floor, it seems like it's settling now, and I can now buy these cards that I bought for way cheaper 4 years ago, I can buy them at this price now and feel comfortable?
It's tough. It's highly dependent on what it is and how liquid it is. I know Rusty just last night mentioned that at one point he was buying PSA 9 unlimited Charizards for 3,000 a piece only because he knew he could instantly sell them for about 5.
Yeah.
So it's highly a function of liquidity, and it's really a case by case basis. There's no like one size fits all rule that you can just apply this percentage. And I've mentioned it before, but like, I don't pay a given flat percentage. It's highly dependent on what it is. It's dependent on how I feel the future prospects are. It's also highly dependent on my bank account too. Like if I just spent 50 grand and I'm running on fumes, I'm more likely to offer a lower amount or just pass on offering. Whereas if I just sold a 6-figure deal, I'm more likely to maybe pay up for something if I think it's promising.
Okay. um so ultra modern, do you do a lot with ultra modern at the minute? I know sometimes, I guess my main question is, with flipping in terms of ultra modern, and it seems like there's a play right now, especially in Japanese, with these kind of character rares and these alternate arts where you can open them in Japanese. There's this time period between Japanese and English coming out, and then you can send them to CGC, see if you can hit a couple tens and flip them onto the market and make a little bit of money. What sort of profit margin are you looking for a potential like flip opportunity? Like if you have a $5 character rare and you can get, let's say you can sell it for $35 in a nine,
Hmm.
and you grade it $12, $13 with CGC. Is that something you're going for? Like those smaller plays like that, maybe in like more of those smaller plays to kind of, or is that something that's just not, it's too low, it takes too much time and it's not worth it?
I do a little bit in all tiers. Like I made that 6-figure sale, but I'm also selling. If you look at my eBay, I've got $18 to $25 CGC 9 first edition WotC cards. I've got similar ultra modern promos. So for me, I'm a little bit all over the place. For you, it just comes down to like how much, if you want to start, like how much do you want to make hourly? How much is worth it to you to make hourly? And like, I mean, I've got a general concept of how long does it take me to make a listing? How long does it take me to fulfill an order? I've kind of got like an all in, very, very rough estimate, but maybe 12 cards an hour as far as taking the photo, say a minute, take the photo, a minute to make the listing if you're really listing a bunch all at once, and then a minute to fulfill it, round it up to 5 minutes to be safe. So 12 cards an hour overall. If you're making $2 per card, I mean, you're making $24. You're making more than a minimum wage job or something, but
Yeah.
that's a decent way to like equate it all, I guess, if you want to do it that way.
Yeah.
That's the way that I've mentally accounted for a lot of them. And some of the prices are still so silly. I had such a backlog. I still have cards coming back from during the boom. I've got like 1,000 cards left at PSA. I'm in a spot where my cost basis is zero. The graded card was $750 to grade it, and they're still selling for $50 to $100. Like,
Yeah.
as far as like, I ordered like 100 boxes of VMAX Climax. I contemplated ripping 20 or 40 of them and making those plays, but I've just got too much other stuff that I need to get through before I do that.
Yeah. That makes sense. I try to look at it like that too. Like, if I spent $5 on the card and I'm making, $20 after grading it, that's pretty good. So those like smaller plays I feel like are maybe less risky in a way than like if you're gonna buy $100 single off of Buy and hope that it shows up in good condition, and like you don't have to worry about those things typically with like modern Japanese. So
Yeah.
you're making less per card maybe, but you're taking less chances, or there's less risk trying to buy a single.
Yeah, and I don't know what those cards exactly are doing in like Perfect 10, but if I've sold some Perfect 10 English modern promos for pretty silly margins.
Yeah.
There's still that like moonshot. I sold some $1 promos, Pikachu V Unions, for $250 a piece.
Yeah.
And I don't know who exactly it is paying those prices on the Perfect 10s. I don't really understand it, but I definitely benefit from it.
Yeah, I don't know if they think that they'll try for like black labels or something later to try and get even more of a profit on it, or if
I
they're
hope
just
it's just a
buying
really
high.
hardcore collector that just really loves the cleanest possible cards. And I hope it's not like an investment with
Yeah,
thought that they're going to make a good return over time.
yeah.
But I really
It's
have no idea.
it's weird, like when you're talking about tens and black labels and pristine tens versus perfect tens. It's like they're so, like, would you even be able to tell? It's kind of that 9.5 to 10 with CGC is like, can you really tell? I don't
I
know.
know I can't. That's why
Yeah,
I always used to be a 9 collector primarily. And these days it's like this card is beautiful. This CGC 8. I You hold it at arm's reach and you really don't see much. It's like
yeah,
paying 10, 50, 100 time premium to remove a few white dots.
yeah.
I'm not about it.
So what made, I guess that was part of what made you just collect nines and kind of sell your tens, but I would assume that over time the tens probably grew, maybe at a similar percentage, or maybe more.
It's very case by case. As I mentioned, it's that Yanma that I hit from Neo Discovery. It got a 10, but it was a 9.
Yeah,
Like, so it was very easy to sell a card that was a weak, ultra low pop 3, I think it was at the time. I want to say I sold it for $2,300, somewhere in there. And I don't follow cards like that closely, but I want to say at one point one had sold for 12, so 5 or 6x. And during the same time frame, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the 9 went up even more so, I think, because the 9 at the time was 25 or $30. And I don't know what that's going for now. So very case by case. Some of the 9s did better, some of the 10s did better. But again, anytime you try to do like a universal rule or generalization, usually there's
yeah,
outliers, usually there's exceptions. But um I know my 9s did really well.
yeah, yeah,
And I've mentioned it before, but a lot of the 9s that I tried, like upgrading my 9s over the years, I tried keeping the cleaner ones. I'm pretty confident that a lot of those 9s, I'm not going to sell them as 9s. I'm going to sell them as 10s one day.
yeah,
Um, I've not, in general, been too much of a cracker over the years, but some of these, like I have no motivation to sell a super clean 9 that's cleaner than some of the 10s that I sell
yeah,
for a tenth of the price. Like I'm going to give it at least one shot.
Might as well.
on a solid stack of cards. I've got a lot of victims of early CGC that I have to crack because I'm not going to sell CGC 8.5 old school EXs. I'd rather sell them in PSA 9 cases.
Yeah, I saw the Green Shiz was cracking a bunch of like 8.5s and 9s and stuff, just trying to get like half a grade higher. It's like I don't know if I would do that. That seems pretty risky, but just for that like a half a grade. But yeah, I definitely I'm a person who's until recently I'd only ever graded with CGC because when I started, PSA was taking forever. And I think I got in before they closed down, but CGC was like the option at that point was like $7 a card, and it they were advertising a fast turnaround, which we know wasn't
Yeah.
true. But so I've only ever really graded with them. I sent the ponchos recently to PSA just because they have like a 94% PSA 10 rate or whatever.
Mhm.
But it was so weird sending off the ponchos to PSA because although I have all this experience now with CGC, like I just felt totally blind sending anything into PSA. And you would think that they would have some sort of crossover the two grading scales like okay, well if it's clean enough to be an 8.5 or a 9, it might be probably a 9 over at PSA, but I think Professor Oak was in my mail day live, and he was like, I have a PSA 10 Pikachu that's got like 5 white dots on it. And I'm like, I don't even have a 9 that has a white dot on it from CGC. So it's like totally, I feel like
If
it's just totally different.
if your mind is attuned to the CGC scale, you're going to have a very good time grading with PSA, I think.
Yeah. I have some cards, yeah, maybe. I have some cards that have like the slight edge wear here and there, and I'm just like, that would be like an 8 or 8.5. I don't know if that would hit a 9. Could hit a 9. I have no idea. Should I send it in for $30? It's like, yeah, I'm mostly waiting until PSA comes down to 20 or less, I think, for a lot of the cards I've been picking up. And I still might even just send them to CGC just because I feel like I know that a little bit more, but I know that they will. CGC is weird. I feel like I'm being pulled in different directions where when PSA gets down to a certain price, I feel like a lot of the big content creators, when that question comes up, should I grade to CGC or PSA, and PSA is at $10 or $15 a card, everyone's just going to say, of course, just send it to PSA. And there's the niche cases that people talk about, like, oh, well, CGC will mark the errors or they'll catalog it correctly or something, and it's like that's such a small portion. I feel like of submissions that need that sort of labeling or things that I just don't know what the future for CGC is when PSA is that cheap again. Um,
Yeah.
I try to be positive about it, like, oh yeah, they'll still be around. Totally, they'll just go cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. But then it's like, if they're like $7 again or $5 again, but PSA is 10, I'd probably just go with PSA at 10. Like, so I don't really know.
Yeah, super long term. It's hard to say. I think there's a decent argument that PSA gives tends too easily, and maybe ultra modern will have a really solid base, almost like BGS does with the black label. There might be like a really solid premium on CGC 10s or especially perfect 10s. I don't really know. It's hard to forecast.
Yeah. How do you feel about Japanese? I know that's not really you don't do a whole lot in Japanese. I feel like most of your stuff is English, right? Most of the stuff
Mhm.
that you play around with. Japanese to me, I feel like is interesting. It's primarily what I do right now. I'm kind of focusing on the mid era. I was doing that before you guys talked about it, and then when you guys talked about the population reports and everything of mid era, I was like, oh boy. But I feel like Japanese is interesting because more and more people are talking about Japanese, and Pokerev is opening like the vintage Japanese boxes now on like his vintage break days, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, those radiants in the Pokemon Go set look so much better in Japanese." And I feel like you hear that more often and more often, and the more that spreads, I feel like there might be more of an opportunity for Japanese cards, especially some of the ones that are more unique than their English counterparts. How do you feel about the future for Japanese cards in, I guess, America or the West?
Yeah, I opened like VMAX Climax the other day. I bought 100 boxes of it. I have some EV Heroes. I have some Remix Bout. I just randomly, when I see them being talked about, when I see them pop up, if I get an opportunity, I'll buy some of the Japanese boxes. But like when I was opening VMAX Climax, it's a fun set. I like it. But to me, like I still prefer English. I don't know what it is exactly. I can say a lot of the arts are nice, and that yellow border that a lot of people don't like,
Yeah.
that just hits my nostalgia. Or what, I don't even know how to like quantify what it is exactly, but I'm still an English guy.
Yeah.
Japanese, where I like it most is again like cards I've never owned yet. Mew Orb, Pika Ring. I've owned Mysterious Pearls. I own a Victory Orb, the non-Mew one, but Wonder Platinum, Master's Key, cards like that I really want to own. As far as like the new set cards, they just don't really. I'd rather have. I know we don't get them all in English, but I'd just rather have the English sets personally.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people's sentiment is they like to be able to read it.
Yeah.
Like the language on the card, and for me, I guess like Japanese is a little more uh, accessible because it's cheaper in most parts if you're buying singles and stuff. But I really like the artwork. So if it's the same artwork on a cheaper card and it happens to have a different language, then I'm I'm pretty okay with it.
One thing that's really big for me too, I have wholesale distribution access for English.
Yeah,
I don't have that for Japanese. So like even though it's more expensive, my relative to the market rate, like I'm paying less for English. So I'm more comfortable there too, I guess, because of that aspect.
yeah, that makes sense. That's really awesome because distribution has basically been like you just haven't been able to get it for like 2 or 3 years, and I'm hoping that in maybe a year or two, when everything, if it continues to slow down, there's not another crazy spike, that hopefully distribution will open back up to people.
I'm interested to see how that all pans out because I know a lot of people are really interested. And I think a lot of people just have warped perceptions of what it is. Cause
Yeah,
like even like now they're not letting people in because there's nothing to buy. The only things there are to buy are Battle Styles, Chilling Reign, and Fusion Strike
mm,
at 85 a box when you can go buy them for 82 on eBay. Like
yeah,
you can buy them cheaper. So you wouldn't even be able to gross what you're paying for them, regardless of any fees. And it wasn't like that years ago, but I first got into distribution 2014, 2015 with Phantom Forces, and I was buying for 80 to 85 a box, buying a couple cases at a time. I couldn't sell those things. Like I could
yeah,
not sell those anywhere because the huge stores were buying them at 70 and they were making a buck or two a box, selling them for like I, it always was the case where distribution price was only $2 to $5 a box cheaper if you were lucky, and you
yeah,
had to buy quantity, and there were credit card fees and minimum orders. And with eBay, you could buy one box shipped free to your door, no credit card fees. So
yeah.
it it's definitely aside from these last couple years, it's not like as glamorous as I think a lot of people think it will be. Maybe we'll just sustain a really long, crazy hype period, the ultra premium collections, things like that, the one off, those have always kind of been there to some extent, but not even really though, because some of the things that are doing really well today, like XY premium trainers collection, I remember buying multiple cases of that still being available at my distributor. People just didn't want a lot of that stuff. They weren't selling. Now, because of the whole boom, mania, all that stuff, those have gone up a ton.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to say like what is wholesale distribution going to be a few years from now.
I feel like for pack breakers and whatnot people and that type of stuff, having distribution is nice because you can sell. You know, if you get an $85 Fusion Strike box and if you sell them at $3-4 a pack, like you're making decent, you know, on
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I mean, if you're just buying the box to turn around and sell the box and you're not making any money off of it, then
Yeah, if you're an
yeah,
online real retailer only, like I am, it's a hard time.
yeah,
I mean, shipping rates have gone up so much. Packaging supplies, inflation's really eating into the margins there.
yeah. Um, so what I know we talk a lot about serialized cards. Jake talks a lot about serialized cards and the opportunity that Pokemon has maybe to introduce those. I'm pretty negative on introducing serialized cards. At least if they were going to introduce them into the main sets. I don't think. I think if they were going to do like a Tops collab again, sort of like Metazoo, and they have like out of 99, yeah, out of 99 stuff like that, I think that would be cool. But I think it would be a nightmare for players and just normal collectors if they started throwing like out of 99 Charizards into, you know, the newest set. Um, or they could do it like is it sports has what like retail and hobby boxes, like two different styles of boxes that you can get at different places or something that have different hits. That could be an interesting thing, but yeah, I don't see that going over well if they just decide to toss in these limited cards.
And I think a lot of it is entitlement in some ways. And maybe that's a bad take by me. I don't know. But I've seen people make the argument, oh, I'm a Doug Trio collector, whatever it may be. I pick a random Pokemon to hopefully not single anybody out. I know Josh is a Diglett guy, but I randomly
Yeah.
pick Doug Trio. If they make a serialized one, I like to have every variant of a card. So if they do numbered to 500, I can't just have one of those. I would have to have all 500 because they're
Oh,
all
geez.
different. One, two, I've seen that
Yeah.
posted somewhere
I don't know
before.
about that.
It's like it's fine missing things. Like they say gotta catch them all, but no one can. It's not reasonable. So to me, like that's I think on a long enough timeline, it's inevitable. I
Yeah.
hope that when it comes out, like you said, I think this is the way to do it. Non TCG, um, Tops collaboration, have the parallels. I think Tops is getting a lot of love lately with the whole Techno Sparkle Spectra.
Yeah.
Throw in those variants or something, some analog to those, and then throw in just an ultra rare. I don't know if you go as crazy of one of ones, but one of 25s onto one of 500s or something.
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting. I'm fine with or without it, but I feel like long enough timeline, it feels inevitable. But maybe not. Maybe they're doing well. 9.1 billion cards last year.
Yeah.
They're not having a hard time selling cards. They're having a hard time making cards. So to do anything very short term, it would be kind of insane just
Yeah.
because they already can't keep stuff on the shelves as far as like aside from the few sets that they are, but
Yeah.
they're still behind on Evolving Skies and Brilliant Stars and
Yeah, I feel like the serialized thing is difficult for me because I have a closet full of sports cards from when I was growing up. And I've got Tom Brady rookie cards and like all these big players rookie cards, but they're literally worth nothing because they're not the right rookie card. It's the
yep.
same art, it's just not green foil or it's not numbered to one of 299 or it's not, you know, it's like there's just something about it just doesn't hold the value. So if you had a Charizard in a set, but then you had a one out of 299 Charizard of the same artwork or whatever, you're basically rendering the other one completely like, you know, I don't know if it would be worthless, but it would be entirely different, I guess.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting if they do something integrated into the box. Then you run into the complexity of, well, now what do you do for reprints? It becomes messy. I think the cleaner way to do it would be an alternate product like the Tops, but
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what they do. I'm all for if there's demand, and there certainly would be. I'm all for them making it. Like I don't fully understand the people who are like, oh, if it has this on it, I need it. and I don't want to need it because it'll cost too much. Like, it's fine passing on things. That's always
Yeah.
been my take.
And you never know if someone's going to throw it up on Facebook Marketplace, in 3 years, and you can pick it up because it's cheaper than it was, or you're in the right place at the right time, to grab it. So
Yeah.
yeah, you can always pass on it, and there might be more opportunities later on to pick it up.
And that like super lotto chance of being able to hit, like, that's not something I really like in Metazoo. You open a pack, you could get that old scratch. You could get like there's an ultra lotto feel to it, kind of in the back of your mind as you're ripping packs.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't when I my introduction to MetaZoo was I bought a first edition Cryptid Nation box when it was $200. In a week, I think it went up to like $800, and I was like, "Well, not opening that."
Yeah.
And ever since then, I was just like, "I'm just gonna buy a sealed box, from now on, and just keep like a sealed." It's like the only sealed collection that I have is just one of each booster box at this point. Um, but yeah, I would love to open more of it. Maybe UFO. I definitely want to open some, and definitely Yokai. Definitely want to open that. That should be really cool. But
Wilderness
MetaZoo's
is really cheap right now. I've seen people blowing out wilderness boxes for like $70 on Facebook, I think.
Yeah, I bought at Collecticon there was a booth that was selling them for $79. So I picked up one while I was there because I looked on eBay and they were going for like 100 and 109. I was like, well, obviously I got to get this. Like, it's the cheapest I've ever seen it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so you announced recently that you're part of their partner program now. So it's kind of like distribution, right? Basically, you'll get product directly from them,
Yeah, it's actually
or
like cutting out distribution. I'm
mm,
getting, like, when I get Pokemon, they sell to a handful of different, maybe a dozen different distributors in North America. So they sell it to the distributor at some price, and then the distributor makes their margin selling it to me. I'm buying it directly from Metazoo.
yeah,
So I don't think I'm allowed. I know that the partner agreement is public, so what I can sell it for is public. What I buy it for, I don't think is, and I don't think I can share. But it is a
gotcha,
very, very low price. It's a very good price, substantially lower than I buy like Pokemon as far as
gotcha.
discount to retail.
So, I know kind of a controversial thing was they announced that they were going to have a minimum advertised price, so like a map price on basically this is the lowest it can go without you breaching a barrier and getting banned from the service. Um, what 118 or 112 or somewhere around there?
112. Yep.
112. Um,
80% of MSRP, which is 140.
gotcha. So that's interesting to me. It makes me wonder if I think for UFO they announced they're going to print the same amount as Wilderness, right? The 100,000 boxes, or
As far as I understand, it's 100. I think it's 50 domestic and then 50 international. I've seen people, I'm in a couple like MetaZoo discords, and I've seen people asking, and I haven't seen like 100% confirmation, but that seems to be the general consensus or thought.
gotcha. It would make sense since I mean Wilderness. I don't know. I guess I don't know if you'd call it a strong set or not. I think Nightfall was a super strong set. I really like the look of the cards in that, and Wilderness may have fallen flat with collectors. I'm not really sure, but it seems like obviously the price, like we just said, you can get them well under what that map price, kind of that minimum advertised price, is going to be now.
Mhm.
How do you think that helps or hurts MetaZoo?
I I have not even fully fleshed out thoughts on it yet. I really need to sit down and think more.
Yeah,
But I'm going to be doing a video Saturday. Sorry to self promote, but
no, that's fine.
uh, I'm still in the process of like processing it all and thinking what my thoughts are on it.
Yeah,
I know there are other industries like minimum advertised price.
that's a normal thing. Yeah,
It's a thing. Like Metazoo didn't just create this
no,
crazy like it's an actual thing, and to some extent like there are arguments for and against it, as with anything else there are pros and cons. One of the first pros that jumps out at me, like going back to the Pokemon thing, when I was buying Phantom Forces wholesale through my distributor for 80 to $85 a box, and I could buy them on eBay for 80 to 85 a box, I couldn't compete. I couldn't
Yeah.
compete with the big stores that were buying it for probably 70 or 72 and making a buck or two a box. I would lose $10 a box. And people with lower eBay fees, people with lower UPS and USPS negotiated rates. But with a map, now a mom and pop card shop, LGS, can compete with like Channel Fireball. Funny thing, you don't have to compete with Channel Fireball anymore because apparently they were banned for violating map,
Okay.
which is interesting because they're like massive.
One of the bigger.
I think they're tied with Card Shop Live. Aren't those one and the same?
I think so.
Because eBay right now, $79.99 for a box of Wilderness. They're the ones blowing it out. I think because they're probably kind of trying to make a statement.
Yeah.
They're done with Metazoo. They got banned from it. They just want to like dump and affect the
Cut and
prices.
run.
Yeah, like they want to get out of it. One, two, they probably kind of want to like damage it. They want to lower the prices and hurt the prospects for Wilderness to some extent. Maybe that's thinking too much. Maybe that's like tinfoil hat. But then the argument against it would be, are you artificially trying to elevate the prices too much? If Wilderness is struggling to keep 80 to 90, why or how do you think there's going to be demand at 112? What's going to happen to the LGSs? What's going to happen to the people like me who buy potentially tens of thousands of dollars worth of it? And I might go a year. The market might never get to 112 on that box. Who knows? I placed a big order. I'm betting that it will. I think it will. But there are scenarios where it could not, and people could be left between break map, get banned, or like don't make payroll, don't pay your lease. I mean, at some point, people are going to be put in a tough position where they just have to sell it, right? Potentially.
Yeah. It's interesting. I did work for a while. I'm a web designer, so I did 5 years of e-commerce web design for basically like farm and feed stores and pet shops and stuff. And they had the same problem where Amazon and Chewy and these big online retailers were able to circumvent MAP, and basically with a it'll be interesting to see how Metazoo is like policing it, because there are bots that will scrape websites for prices basically, and it will like ping and be like, oh, this retailer has listed this, below map, and we're going to send them a warning, or whatever. And what we did, because a lot of these mom and pops had to try and fight online with those guys, is essentially whenever you see a C price in your cart, like on Amazon or whatever, that's because when it goes to the cart, it can be whatever price it wants to be.
Yeah.
Because it won't, that listing page can't get scraped anymore for that price. So it makes me wonder if sites that have their own websites, their own e-commerce, like, well, I guess Channel Fireball got caught, or Card Shop Live, if they weren't doing that, or if Metazoo has a small enough amount of partners that they can constantly kind of be policing their partners and the prices that people are getting.
I think it's pretty small. I don't know exactly, but they have an announcement section in their Discord, and I believe they announced, like, my name was announced. I think an exhaustive list has been announced of all the partners, and it's not like hundreds or thousands or something. I think it's dozens maybe. But as far as I understand, you can't circumvent it. Like, minimum advertised price is almost like a misnomer in the way that they're doing it, because no bundling is allowed to circumvent it. No sales promotions. Like, you can't say, okay, it's 112. I'm running a 30% off blowout sale.
Right.
112 is the floor on what it can be sold for, and you're just banned if you violate it. It's going to be, I'm going to make a video about it. I'm going to talk about kind of like projecting how I think it's going to go. I think at a minimum, I think some amount of people with bad intentions went into the partnership program just planning to like, hey, I'm going to get these boxes super cheap. I don't give a crap about it long term. I'm just going to quick flip, whether they do it for 80, 90, 100, who knows, but I'm going to take the money and run. Who cares if I get banned for life? Like, that's not me. That's not what I'm doing. But some people are probably going to do that.
Yeah.
And how many people, how long will it last? How many people will, from a good place, like how many people will go into it from a good place with good intentions? I don't want to break map. I don't want to violate map. But then like the broader economy continues down, Pokemon continue. Say we get to a spot where Pokemon overprints and they've got sets going for $69.99, like Crimson Invasion did, like a couple of these other sets.
Yeah.
What's Metazoo going to be doing there? What if we get into a scenario like that and well-meaning companies need to either sell it and break map, or like I said, or the lights go out, or they don't make payroll, or it's really going to be interesting. And obviously I hope the best. I'm invested in Metazoo as far as inventory goes, collecting. I enjoy it, so I'm invested in it emotionally through that side, and as a partner, all that. I hope it goes well. I'm taking a gamble that it will, calculated risk, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a battle with demand, because if the demand just isn't there at 112, like they're just not going to sell any product. Or maybe they're just thinking, okay, well, if 112, then collectors will just look at it and say, well, that's the lowest I'm going to buy it for, so I'm going to buy it for that. Which is kind of nice as a collector to say, like, oh, well, it's not going to go any lower than that, so I'm just going to buy it at that. To not have to think like, oh, maybe in 2 weeks it'll be $95 or whatever. But at the same time, 112, if, I just bought Wilderness for 79, it's kind of like, that's a lot more than 79.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing, and trying to like, clearly we could never know the answer.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what if Pokemon had a map? What if their map was 112? Would it take some of those high flyer ones that stunk right out of the gates? Would it dampen the crazy runaway price of like Evolving Skies, how it went to 180? Or would it be worse? Sets like Battle Styles, Chilling Reign, the ones that are just being dumped like that, it would maybe prevent the big guys from getting so much, and maybe some of the little guys would be able to get a little bit and move it. Maybe it would be selling slowly for
Yeah.
112. Really impossible to know how it would all work, but it'll be an interesting kind of experiment with Metazoo.
Do you
I
know if they had said anything about needing to have that price in brick and mortars or at like cons and stuff like that? Like,
Yeah, so the partnership rules are actually public. And I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but there were fairly specific rules. If you're brick and mortar, let me try to find it here. Just to not misquote anything, I guess. So if you're brick and mortar, you need to sell. So actually for the first 1 week before release and 2 weeks after, map isn't 80%, map is full MSRP. So
oh,
for 1 week before and 2 weeks after release date, you need to be at the full 140.
does that count for pre-orders as well?
I would think so, yeah.
Then I feel
Partners
like no
not
one would pre-order.
Yeah, if you know that in 2 weeks it's going to be a 20% discount, right?
Right. Yeah. That's
Y-
interesting.
yeah, and then partners with brick and mortar storefronts, with the exception of using streaming platforms like Whatnot and Drip, cannot sell more than 20% of their partner allocation online. So say you are a brick and mortar and you get like 500 boxes, you have to sell 400 of them in your store. You can only sell 100 max. How they police that, if they can police that,
Yeah.
those are the ones that are a little bit tougher to police, I guess. But the way that social media, the way that the internet goes,
Whistleblowers.
if someone's got a box of UFO in their
Yeah.
LGS for 99.99, someone's taking a picture of it and posting it online, and then it's going to get around. And
And then someone will get banned.
yeah, whether it's through Troll and Toad, whether it's through an LGS, eBay, wherever it may be, screenshots, DMs, it's gonna move quickly, and
Yeah.
it'll be interesting. Like if they ban Card Shop Live, if they ban Channel Fireball, they're
They're
gonna
serious about
ban
it.
anybody. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's banning big customers.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
So how do you feel about the way that they're going about releasing the different editions? So you had first edition, and then now you have like second edition, right? And I'm sure there will be like Nightfall second edition and Wilderness second edition. But is that something that if the I wonder, you may not know the answer to this, but if the if the supply is still out there, like Wilderness, for instance, selling for $80, do they really need to print a second edition of Wilderness? Like, if the demand isn't there for a second edition, and there's still a lot of product on the secondary market, will they just choose to either like short print or not print something like a second edition?
I think that I'm not positive on this. I think they've explicitly stated that second editions are no longer going to be a thing. I,
Oh,
Cryptid Nation was, and I believe Cryptid Nation first edition is not legal in tournaments. I think you need to use second edition for Cryptid Nation.
just because it spiked so high so fast, probably.
Yeah, I believe. So here's someone in Metazoo chat saying there will be second edition Nightfall, but not in booster boxes. So maybe they'll only do it through like retail, like Walmart type
Yeah,
hanger
like the
boxes, things
hanger.
like
Yeah,
that. I'm honestly not. I'm reading through like I just searched
yeah,
second
yeah.
edition Nightfall in the Discord, and
That would be interesting because that sort of sounds like the whole like Japanese Pokemon situation where first edition had like this kind of big print run and then they just kind of filled whatever they needed with unlimited. If that's similar with what they're doing, where like, oh, you can only get second edition packs, and will that make second edition long term like more sought after because it's less printed, or
that's why I'm glad Pokemon did away with first edition, because the whole dynamic that Japanese has, where some unlimited sets are almost non-existent, way rarer than first edition. I'm not a
confusing.
huge, yeah, I'm not a huge variant guy. I would be fine if they dropped first edition altogether, and then if they just did, or if it's all first edition, or if it's all first edition, or if none of it's first edition, those are functionally equivalent, right?
Yeah,
Like Evolving Skies, it's all first edition and none of it's first edition. It's because there's no distinction. So
yeah,
whether or not it's one or the other doesn't really matter to me. I just prefer that they don't do first, second, third, fourth, fifth.
yeah.
I'm just not a variant guy.
I always thought that was kind of weird when they first announced it, where they're like, "Oh, we might have like third, fourth, fifth editions," and it's like, why? Just make an unlimited print then, because like I don't want a card that has a 5 on it, let alone a card that has a 2 on it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So that is the whole Japanese scenario is weird because everyone in the West looks at first edition and says, "Well, I want the first edition copy," because we're used to the first edition being more rare.
Mm.
So it's one of those things that's like, is that whole unlimited first edition scenario too niche for what it is? Like, will people look at like unlimited Japanese and against a first edition Japanese, and the first edition will sell higher, even though the unlimited will have like a lower pop, maybe, or maybe everyone looking at this particular scenario is within the niche, and the wider market doesn't really care about Japanese.
I know English has some of that going on though too. Like Zach Gem at Pokemon, he's one card away from like an entire PSA 10 WotC set, and I think it's the Neo Revelation Ampharos Unlimited, because it's like a pop one or pop two,
Yeah,
and some of like the bounties that he put on that card, some of those cards really, really high in unlimited edition. I think some of them are surpassing the first edition counterparts. If not, they're really close. But a lot of the pops and a lot of the PSA 10 percentages on the unlimited are substantially lower than the first edition. For me, it was an easy choice to just go first edition everything PSA 9, and I was done. Again, I'm not a
yeah.
variant guy. To me, just even though I'm not a huge fan of the first edition distinction, as a collector, as a business, I've been in other hobbies too, where it's just a thing. Like it or not, it's a thing that, generally speaking, first edition is like the more ubiquitous. People see it as something special.
Do they know why that happened with some unlimited runs where they're a lot harder to grade? Was it like did they print actually less, or was it just less of them, more of them got used than like their first edition counterparts, or the print was just worse? or do we know why? Like, isn't Slow King another one that unlimited has really low pop?
I think a Slow King sold for like 12 grand, and then another
Nice,
one
that's
went for
crazy.
like 6, like a
Yeah,
couple weeks later. P- PSA 10 super low pop is like the complete opposite of where I live and where I play around. So
yeah,
I'm not an expert on that. As far as why the unlimiteds, a lot of the unlimiteds, especially the really early ones, like base unlimited, very obviously printed substantially more
oh
than
yeah,
base
yeah,
first edition. Fossil Jungle, same thing. But then people say, well, why are the pops higher on some of the first editions? Why do we see more boxes first edition than unlimited? Because I think many years ago, when stores were selling what they would sell the unlimited and keep the first edition as an investment, as whatever. And you were just more likely to have the like, I know when I was growing up, all my cards, 95% plus, were unlimited.
yeah,
Ripping packs, throwing them in your
yeah.
pocket, throwing
Same.
them in your backpack, wherever, not caring about them. Whereas the first editions were more the LGSs, whoever had them, middlemanning them, whatever, they were aware to some extent, like, oh, I'm going to keep these ones sealed. And that's why I think more first edition boxes exist today. Um, it feels like, at least, again, not for base, but for Fossil and Jungle, you see quite a few unlimited boxes, but I'm pretty sure you see quite a bit more first edition ones.
Yeah, the only first edition card I had in my binder when I was a kid was the Machamp.
Yeah.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure everyone did. I did have a Shadowless Venusaur though. I don't know where that came from, but somehow Shadowless Venusaur Hollow. It is beat. But it's a pretty cool thing to have found in my binder.
I have a very vague memory, and I'm not sure, and there's never going to be a way to confirm, but I definitely feel like I remember on the playground at one point or another, someone pointing out, oh, these cards are different, they're fake. And then I was like really bummed out that I had some fake cards. I could be misremembering. I feel like I had some shadowless ones that I just threw away because
Oh
I was convinced they were fake. Like, I noticed differences in them. No
yeah,
hollows or anything like that. I could be slightly manufacturing this, misremembering it, whatever, so long ago. But I feel like I distinctly remember having some base set cards that I noticed were different. Because looking back at my binder, I had not a single shadowless card. And part of me is like, I think I had some at one point and I threw them away because they were fake.
yeah,
Or I thought they were fake, but it could have actually just been fake cards that I had too that weren't shadowless. They were just fake, and I caught them and threw them away.
yeah.
I don't remember, honestly.
If you were to make one change to the way that modern cards are are right now, what change would you make to those? What would you like to see either them get rid of or add, or what do you think?
I think they're doing really well. Like, I honestly don't have too many complaints. I loved the Amazing Rares. A lot of the all arts are really cool. I think they're just knocking out of the park in general, and I don't have any way to like substantially improve on it. Um, a couple like gripes that I have, that just my take, not really valid. Clearly, they're killing it. So if they listen
Yeah,
to me, they'd probably not do nearly as well. But the chase is excessive. Having to open thousands of packs to complete. I don't do master sets. I don't do reverse hollows. But
yeah,
even completing like a straight set, several hundred packs at a minimum, it's a lot. It's I get stuff wholesale. I'm doing this as a business, and I'm not even finishing binder sets. I'm a
yeah,
binder set guy, and I haven't finished a complete, celebrations aside. That's the only set. That's the first set in a long, long time that I opened every card out of a pack myself. Maybe since Phantom Forces, because I opened a
yeah,
couple cases of Phantom Forces. I guess evolutions I would have done too. So there's probably some random sets in there that I did do, but
yeah,
yeah, the sheer cost of someone, if they want to open every card themselves, which I can relate to that goal a lot because I value the cards that I open myself more. It's just like impossible these days. You'd have to spend several $1,000s every set.
yeah. Rev did a live opening Pokemon Go. It was like 914 packs, and that's like a pretty small set.
Yeah.
But some people could be more lucky than him. Some people have worse luck than him. But 900 and some packs for a fairly small like specialty set. That's pretty
Crazy.
rough. Yeah.
Yeah.
My whole thing is, I don't quite. I get why they do it. It probably saves a lot on cost, but the fact that the let's say V Star now, so the V Star Mewtwo is the exact same artwork as the Rainbow V Star Mewtwo, which is the exact same artwork as the Gold V Star Mewtwo, and it's like it would spice up the rainbows and the golds a little bit if they had like different artworks for each of the rarities. But
Yeah.
I can see how that's paying more for artists, artwork and stuff like that. But
Yeah, the rainbows I've never been a big fan of, so I guess that's another gripe too. But I know a lot of people like them. I think a lot of kids really like them, and so it is like I'm one who I don't deviate too much. If you've clearly watched my channel a little bit, if you watch my openings, like I'm a bit robotic, and I'm easy to please, and I'm hard to really disappoint. I'm just kind of like hanging out in that middle ground usually. So yeah, I'm usually pretty happy with what they're doing.
yeah, I mean the alternate arts and the character rares, like character rares were super unique when they were in Cosmic Eclipse. Everyone was like, "Oh my god, that set's so amazing because they have the character rares." And now every single set coming out has the character rares, and it
Yeah.
kind of goes back to what you guys say all the time: is like there's always gonna be shinier and new things, and just because this happened, here doesn't mean it's not gonna become a regular thing later on, and
Yep.
it's something to really think about when you're investing or buying up cards in modern and stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't underestimate artists' ability to continue to create beautiful art, and I wouldn't underestimate their ability to innovate new texturing, new foiling, new flashy, shiny, beautiful card
Yeah.
layouts.
How do you feel about the future prospects of holo cards? Let's say from like black and white. Like whenever they first introduce the ultra rares, do you feel like holos from those sets are just going to be forgotten because the ultra rares are going to kind of take the spotlight, or do you feel like the holos have good enough art, maybe cool enough holo patterns? I wouldn't say that black and white has a cool holo pattern, but um, those sets that also were accompanied by these higher rarity ultra rares. Do you feel like those holos have a chance? In the future, will it be just the popular Pokemon like Lugia or yeah? What do you think?
I know old school EX era. I guess that would be like Neo era. You had the regular hollows, and then you had the shinies, were like the real chase, right? So
Yeah,
that would be the first era where
yeah. I guess I
uh,
forgot about those.
yeah, like Neo Revelation, right? Would be your
Yeah,
first era where you had a new tier, and that was like Shining Gyarados, one of my favorite cards in the hobby.
yeah,
Um, and then with the EX era, you continued it from then on. You've had it. So Neo Revelation started it, and then it continued on. EX era, you went to the. That's where I guess you got the second one, right? Because you had not in Ruby and Sapphire, not in Sandstorm, but the first Gold Star set. Now you had Hollows, EX's Gold Stars, and then they never turned back from there. They did Primes and Level X's, they did Legends and Primes, they did now we've got like
a bunch of
a lot of
them.
them.
Yeah,
So hollows have just been continually pushed down. They've always been like the lowest. I mean, base at first edition, they were the lowest and the highest because they were the only
right.
chase, right? And then they've always been that one tier, the lowest tier above, but there's just been like more layers added on top. So how those will perform long term, I have no idea. It is
Yeah,
mind blowing. Some of like English set cards, they're printing way more of them now than they were in Diamond and Pearl and Platinum and Heart Gold Soul Silver. And clearly they printed way more of them back in WotC era, like way more. But how low some of those pops are for English set cards, which those were still mass printed, not as mass
yeah.
as current or former um print runs of 99 to 2002 era. they still printed a lot of them, and the pops on some of those are like 5 graded. I don't know what those things are going to look like. I sold some of those for like, to me, it felt like really silly numbers. 4-figure prices
Yeah.
for hollows with only a handful. I mean, maybe I'm going to look silly 5 or 10 years from now. Maybe the pops won't even double from where they were. I have a hard time believing that, but it's really hard to say. I recently graded, and I've only sold a couple so far because I haven't even listed them on eBay. But I graded a near complete hollow set of all black and white era.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and like I sold a Blissey the other day. I think it was like $60. I sold a PSA 9, highest in the world, none higher,
Yeah.
two graded. There was a 9 and an 8, and I had the 9, and it's like $1.50 raw, near mint, which isn't PSA 9 mint most times. How those things are all going to evolve, I have no idea, but I'm really interested to follow along.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if there's even binders full of mid-era and black and white out there, or if it's like, if for the longest time it didn't make sense to grade any of those cards, so will those cards end up being kind of worse for wear and might not see a whole lot of tens from those sets just because they have been sitting in binders and they weren't graded right away. I don't really know. I mean, the Japanese pops are the same thing, especially for black and white. I was looking at them today, and it's like 110, 09s, no
Yeah.
unlimited, graded. Like, so, yeah, I don't know how or if they will develop.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about. No idea. I really need to go through and get those listed. It's hard to come up with prices on some of those because it's like I can't really replicate it right now. Grading prices are $30 over 6 months. It's a $2 card. I don't have any more raw mint though. Like I don't have 20 of every black white era. Maybe I should go on Troll and Toad and spend a few grand and get 20 of all of them. I have
Yeah.
no idea. But yeah, it's kind of crazy.
How do you rank rarity and scarcity for possible long term holds? Because, like the Poncho Pikachu's, for instance, this is kind of a selfish question because I've been debating whether or not I sell them to just make all the profit and then use it for later, or to keep them long term. But they're not rare. There's like 710s, for each of the Charizard ones at least, and I think the Magikarps are around similar. But if you look at like sold listings or current listings, there's not a lot on there. Like it doesn't seem like people are selling them very often. So in that sort of situation where there's a lot out there, there's a lot of high graded, the demand's pretty high because when they are out there, they do sell, and they sell at a high price, but there isn't that many listings ever regularly. What what do you think about that situation?
Are the boxes still out there
You could still
accessible?
buy the sealed boxes. I've seen them on Buy, but they're like 2-3 thousand, a box, or
They're more than the cards in PSA 10, or
they're about similar. That's what I've seen them for. You can buy the cards raw for like 700-800 bucks. And in a 10 they seem to sell between like 1,500 and 2,000.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just not an aspect of the market I've really looked at. To me, to me, there's very few things in the hobby that I can't outperform by just having that capital to buy below market and sell at market, like just continually
Yeah.
flip. It all comes down to like how much time you have. If you're doing this on the side, time is clearly a limiting factor. So if you sold everything tomorrow and had that pile of capital to try to actively flip with, it might be more than you even have the time to do. Like time was always my biggest limiting factor doing it on the side. It still is today doing it full time.
Yeah.
So to me, again, I'm not a 10 guy. I'm not a huge Japanese guy. Those are exclusive promos, so I do like them more than like set cards, but I'd probably list them pretty high personally and try to just get the capital and move into something else.
Yeah.
Could be the wrong play though. They could be one that was good to throw in the vault and then just whatever it gets percent year over year. No idea, but
Yeah, I feel like I feel like for a long time I would imagine that the cards would hover around a similar price, because if you're talking 710s, like if it shoots up to like the sale tomorrow is 5 grand, a lot of those are probably gonna like shoot out onto the market and bring it back down to like 2 grand. So
Oh
just
yeah.
because there's so many of them highly graded already, I wonder if there really is that much movement that can happen short term. Probably not short term, but
And in some way, like you look at sports, these arguments that 700 is it's high pop in Pokemon, but is it low pop overall? I don't know the answers to any of these things. Like I still can't wrap my head around the fact that like $1,000 is a lot of money. I know nobody in my real life who is a buyer for that card. And you think about like everyone you went to high school with, everyone you went to college with, everyone you worked with, you know, hundreds, if not 1,000 plus people, and you know quite a few people, and then like friends of friends. And I don't really know anyone who's buying cards like this and cards that I'm selling nearly every day, multiple times a week. And little scary from that perspective, but then it's like, look at sports, look at, depending on the day, depending on my mood, I can make the bullish case, I can make the bearish case. Big thing though too, like part of like some people are where everything is down so much. Oh, I don't want to sell at a loss. I don't want to sell with it being down so much. It might go up from here. If you're selling those and then immediately buying into something else in the Pokemon sphere that you feel has better value prospects, you're still invested in it. Like when I sold my PSA 9 Gold Star set for 13 grand, whatever it was, it hurts a little bit that they tripled from there, quadrupled from there, whatever they
right.
did. But I immediately put that all back into another card that I felt better value from. And in hindsight, my number one did outperform the PSA 9 Gold Star set. So my thought that was the better value for. I had to sell the Gold Star set and then put some money in too. I didn't get the number one for 13 grand, but my mind, the way that I saw the value there, the exchange that I made the right play in hindsight. But sometimes I made the wrong play too. But as long as you're putting it back into something else, um, you're likely to see some amount of appreciation, right?
Yeah.
If you're right, you're going to see higher appreciation. If you're wrong, I mean, maybe you see slightly less. Maybe it doesn't go down as much. Maybe it goes down slightly more. At the end of the day, it's a very complex optimization problem with infinite moving parts.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to predict demand is just like it's basically
Impossible.
impossible.
Yeah.
Like I don't I don't I I don't know how Jake somehow is able to figure that out sometimes, where it's like this is super low and then like a year later he's selling, or less than a year later he's selling stuff for thousands and thousands of dollars. But it's like I that's something that I struggle with, though, is balancing um kind of the higher cost cards with the lower cost cards, where you have a much smaller buyer pool with some of the higher cost cards. Like last month, I bought a Screen Pikachu promo for under $500, and it graded an 8. So last sold's around like 7, maybe around there, and it's been sitting there for a couple weeks at, I think, 749 is what I have it listed at,
Mm.
and it's just chilling. It's got some watchers and stuff, but it's like I would have thought, having bought that card and trying to sell it now, that would be pretty liquid, because it's a pretty interesting card, and it seems like it has a lot that people want. But I think that price, you're just narrowing it down so far, the amount of people who can actually pay that.
At that range, there's a lot of cards you can get, tens of solid cards. So I mean, in eight, definitely. I don't know the exact pop. I don't follow pops too closely, but there's a lot of tens of that card. There's a lot of nines of that card. Um, so I don't know what the nines go for. Maybe people are just like, oh, I'd rather pay X amount more and get the 9 on a card like this. Maybe they're not looking at that card entirely, and oh, I'd rather have. You can get PSA 10 first edition WotC cards,
True. Yeah.
holos for that price tier too. Again, $750 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's crazy to look around at some of the things that I have and that I sell and the numbers that I'm dealing with these days, because outside of Pokemon, like I'm a very frugal guy, and some of these things, like how they relate to my household spending. Like, I just sold that card. That's more than I'm going to spend in my household
Yeah.
in a month, on a family of 4. And again, I just don't know who the buyers are, but there's clearly a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
So last thing before we wrap up, I think this would be a good spot. So CGC, do you think that CGC cards are how many people do you think are buying CGC cards with the intention to crack? Because I I think it's a lot. Um like I think CGC cards sell because people want to crack them. And they sell at a lower, a lower price and everything and but how that can catch up to them at some point, especially if the PSA prices continue to come down. I feel like a lot of people, and then how do you regulate pop reports at that point, especially for CGC, if so many of those cards are being cracked and cross graded?
Yeah, I have hundreds of CGC cards that I intend to crack over the next few months, or maybe a couple of years, depending on how many more things I buy and that I need to do in between now and then. But a lot of them are like 8 to 9.5s that I'm going to try to make a play on. Like, I have a lot of 8.5s and 9s that I'm pretty confident can get PSA 10s.
Yeah.
So, like, the price differential between PSA 9 and PSA 10 is so drastic that if I crack 200 CGC 8.5s, I might only need 10 of them to hit 10s to make a substantial amount of money in that endeavor. Say 45% goes to 8s, 45% goes to 9s. The premium on some of these cards in PSA 9 over CGC 8.5 is pretty drastic. And some of them, especially with what I'm paying at auction at sometimes, the discount of a PSA 8 to a CGC 8.5 might be non-existent. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to buy blindly, not looking at the card, not looking at the label, or sorry, not looking at the label, not looking at the like the manufacturer of the case. I'm just trying to buy clean cards
Yeah.
for the best value, the lowest amount possible. And the label's always blue, because I mean, people are undervaluing them, in my opinion. I do occasionally buy PSA ones as well, but I'm all about, people like big numbers. Whoever's going to get me the bigger number is generally going to get me the most money on the open market. Maybe things drastically change. Maybe by the time I get to it, 2 to 5 years from now on some of these cards, maybe things drastically change and CGC is more of a front runner. Maybe PSA has some crazy thing that happens and they fall out of favor for whatever reason. Who knows? But like, grading costs, historically as high as they've ever been, they're still a fraction of like the card's value. So how much people pay for the ultimate end product, the card in the slab, having to crack and cross, whether it's blue to red or red to blue or red to gold, black, whatever, I'm just going to put it in the proper case and label that the market's valuing the most at the time. Today, generally speaking, that's PSA.
Yeah.
But yeah, how the dynamic works, I'm not a pop report guy. Again, I do a little bit of analysis looking at them, but as far as making investment plays based on low pop, and I'm not a big one. Some people might hate me for it, but like, I collect labels.
Yeah.
I'm not going to send these in. I just don't care to. Um, a lot of them are like not super low pop things anyways, or whatever. It's not like it's going to have a drastic effect, but I guess if there's 100 of me doing it, then it has more of an effect.
Yeah.
But yeah, at this point, I would do it more with PSA potentially down the line if the PSA 10 and 9 premium seems really silly. Cause like I said, I have a complete, aside from the first few sets, WotC first edition. I have no motivation to sell the PSA 9s.
Yeah.
Like, PSA 9, I have no idea what it goes for, but where did I just put, I don't know where I just put those cards. Everything's always a mess. But I have, oh yeah, here it is. Whatever this card goes for in PSA 9, I have it and I have no motivation to sell it. I know when I put it together, it's probably one I opened from a pack when I broke that box, or it's one that I just bought that I upgraded to. It's pretty clean. I've
Yeah.
had worse looking tens. So when I know what the 10 goes for and I know what the 9 goes for, where I'm at in my like in my endeavor, in my business, selling a card for a couple $100, it isn't like I'd rather sell this card for a couple $100. Or sorry, this is unlimited, so not this one. I
I
just sold that one.
mean, if I
I
could.
sold one of those for 70 today. Those are still
Yeah.
going for 70. But yeah, I have a lot of other cards I'd rather sell for $200, $300
Yeah.
before I'll sell that one. I guess if I get through a lot more of my inventory and if I fail to reacquire new inventory to sell and I really get down like running on fumes, then I'll be looking at these more. Then I'll need to recall my vault and get some of those listed. But for now, PSA 9 WotC first edition hollows, I just have no motivation to sell. Even less so CGC 8s, and I need to get those in better slabs that the market appreciates more because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, a lot of people say buy the card, not the grade, or buy, like Jake says, buy the card and the grade. Most of the market buys labels.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That is, and I love label buyers because I get that notification on eBay, payment, ship it. I send it to them. Here's a first edition one, $150. I send it. I never hear from them. They're happy. Whether it was a 10, whether it was a 9 in the 10 case, doesn't matter because the sale's over and done. And people just buy labels,
Yeah.
largely. And
Yeah. I always struggled to buy graded cards, even to like crack and send to the other grading companies or whatever. I feel like a lot of people buy undervalued graded cards, but there's for some reason there's a part of me that's like, well, if I can find a mint one, then it will be cheaper, and then I can choose when I want to grade it later. Um, but part of me feels like also that's could be foolish because are you actually going to find that mint one? Like
yeah,
you could buy the 9 at the cost of grading plus the cost of the raw right now, and it might go up, but
I used to buy binder collections and find stuff like this raw and then being the one to grade it. Like that's the lowest cost, generally speaking.
yeah.
Um, Times like this though, with the market as low as it is on certain things like this, nice swirl there too.
Oh yeah.
Um, pretty bad print lines though, but I feel like the back is super clean. I feel like it could be a 9. Grading is so arbitrary. It feels like at times it's so +or -1, and the
Yeah.
implications of +or -1. If it's a 9, well, it can get an 8 or a 10 depending on the day, 8, 9, or 10. And the value differential between those is just so absurd in my opinion. I just have less like looking back years ago, some of the 9s that I sold duplicates and running an auction to get $25 on a PSA 9. I'm in a place where I don't have to do that anymore. And
Yeah.
so I just have shoe boxes and shoe boxes and shoe boxes of all these CGC 8 to 9.5s I need to do something with.
Yeah.
And some of the 9.5s, like it's not universal. I have 9.5s that I am quite confident will not cross the 10s. And then I have 8.5s that I'm pretty sure will. So all the companies have good days and bad days and variation, and
Yeah.
buy the card alone. Like I don't pay premiums for labels.
Yeah.
I buy the card alone. Like it, I in my mind, I crack it out of the case. What am I going to pay for this raw? And I won't pay. I mean, with a reseller's mind, if it's in a 10 case and if I know it goes for X, I'll clearly pay a discount to that to just flip it.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I don't buy 10s at anywhere near market to just hold. I just don't like the
Yeah.
super premiums on them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of swirls, I am that guy who will pay a little bit more for a swirl.
I know that I'm that guy that I'm a businessman and I know it's a thing. So I'm so bad when I'm listing. Like I probably won't do a good enough job to capture it in the picture and I'll just completely forget. But ideally I'd put it in the title and like because I'm aware of the fact that it's now a thing.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting that it wasn't a thing before, and I wonder what made it a thing. If it was like influencers that started calling it out, like, "Oh, look at this swirl," and then everyone was like, "Oh, swirls are cool,"
Yeah.
but I don't know. There's something about it that it's not on every card, so it makes it somewhat unique. And I picked up a couple of Japanese cards recently that have hollow bleed, so they have a swirl down by the description, and they have a swirl in the box, which is pretty cool. So,
Yeah, it's just
but
another tier of chase, right? Like a lot of these cards, especially set cards, were mass printed. So if you do condition rarity and then you do like foil rarity, like don't just get a PSA 10, get a PSA 10 with a swirl in it. And now you're doing like a subset of a subset of a subset, just increasing
yeah,
that chase, which we're all addicted to. So
yeah,
it
true,
kind of makes sense.
yeah. Well, Dan, I really appreciate you stopping in and having this conversation with me. You guys definitely check out Dan Catch 'em All Collectibles. He, if you love spreadsheets and amazing, amazing analytical information about this hobby and markets and everything, he has the history behind him. And you were an engineer, right? Prior to, so yeah, he has the
Chemical
smarts,
engineer, yeah.
the smarts and the history and everything you need to know about Pokemon. You can check out Dan's Catch 'em All Collectibles channel. So
I
thank you very
appreciate
much.
that, and I appreciate you having me on. It was a great chat, a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Always love talking shop, talking
yeah.
Pokemon.